2029 sounds comfortably far away. It is not, and I want to explain why before you plan your year around it. The endpoint is fixed, but the dates that will actually govern your work are set by your own accreditation body, and they land much earlier. In this video, I will show you how the transition really unfolds, how to build a plan backwards from the date that matters to you, and the one scheduling mistake that turns a comfortable transition into a scramble. One quick thing before we start, and then I will leave you alone about it. Everything I am about to walk you through, we have already built for you. There is the full ISO IEC 17020 2026 edition documentation kit, 3 separate checklists, one for implementation, one for your internal audit, and one for the accreditation audit itself, and a complete online training course if you want to go deeper than a video can take you. All the links are in the description below this video, right? Now let's get into it. Let's start with what is fixed. The 3rd edition was published on the 27th of March 2026, and it cancels and replaces the 2012 edition. Cancels. The old edition is not an alternative you may continue to use, it is withdrawn. The transition deadline for bodies that are already accredited is 2029. After that date, accreditation held against the 2012 edition is no longer valid. That is the entire fixed part. Everything else about your transition, and I mean everything, is set by your own accreditation body. And that is the part people get wrong because they read 2029, subtract today's date, and conclude they have 3 years. They do not. Here is the mechanism, and once you see it, the timing becomes obvious. Your accreditation body decides when it will start assessing against the new edition, and when it will stop accepting the old one. Those 2 dates differ between accreditation bodies, sometimes by a year. And crucially, your transition is not a separate event you book when you feel ready. It is assessed during a scheduled visit, normally a surveillance visit or a reassessment. So your real deadline is not 2029. It is your last scheduled assessment that falls before your accreditation body's cutoff. If your reassessment is in the autumn of 2027, and the next one after that would be past the cutoff, then your deadline is that autumn 2027 visit. Go and look at your assessment calendar now. That date, not 2029, is the one to plan backwards from. So plan backwards from that date. Here's a schedule that works. 1 month before assessment, your documentation should be stable and nothing should still be changing. Assessor's notice documents approved the week before a visit. 3 months before, your internal audit covering the new requirements is complete, with findings closed or at least in progress with evidence. 4 months before, a management review has been held that considers the transition. 6 months before, your new and revised procedures are live in generating records, because records are what gets sampled. And 9 months before, your gap analysis is finished, and your independence type has been redetermined per inspection activity. Count those backwards from your assessment date. For a lot of bodies watching this, that means starting now, not next year. And what does the transition actually involve? 6 things, and only 2 of them are large. Redetermine your independence type, per inspection activity, against the normative Annex A. Build control of data and information under Clause 7.5, including validating the system you use for inspection data and putting change control around it. That is the one with the longest lead time, because it usually involves a software supplier who does not work to your schedule. Add a proportionate risks and opportunities process under Clause 8.4. Map every technology you use against 6.2.9, 7.2.5, and 7.2.6. Split appeals from complaints into 2 procedures and publish both processes. And revisit liabilities under 5.2.4, which now wants a risk analysis and a provisions assessment, not just an insurance certificate. Now, the constraint that catches everyone, and it is not writing, it is evidence. New requirements need records, and records need time to accumulate. You cannot show an assessor 12 months of impartiality monitoring in your first week. You cannot show change control under 7.5.1 if no changes have yet gone through it. In Clause 8.4.2b2 requires you to evaluate the effectiveness of the actions you took on risks and opportunities, which means those actions must have run long enough to be evaluated. This is why I put 6 months of live operation into the backwards schedule. It is not padding. It is the minimum time for a new requirement to leave a trail. A body that finishes its documentation 2 months before assessment has technically transitioned and will still struggle because there is nothing to sample. And what actually happens if you leave it late? Let me be realistic rather than dramatic. Findings raised at your transition assessment have to be closed within your accreditation body's time limits. If you are already at your last scheduled visit before the cutoff, a batch of findings you cannot close in time pushes your transition past the deadline. Accreditation bodies also get progressively busier as the date approaches, so extra visits become harder to schedule at exactly the moment you need one. The common outcome is not dramatic withdrawal. It is a scope reduction. The activities where you could not demonstrate conformity come off your schedule, and you have to apply to get them back, which costs another assessment. Losing scope is a commercial problem, not just a paperwork one. Clients notice, and some of them are contractually required to notice. Finally, keep the plan itself short. 1 page will do, and it needs 5 things. Your assessment date, confirmed with your accreditation body rather than assumed. A gap analysis by requirement, with each one marked new, changed, or unchanged. That third category is the one that saves you work, because most of your system did not change. An owner and a target date for each gap. A list of the records that will exist by assessment day. Write that list early, because it tells you when each new process must go live, working backwards. And the dates of your internal audit and management review both comfortably before the visit. That is a plan an assessor will respect, and more importantly, it is one you can actually run. So, the endpoint is 2029, but your real deadline is your last scheduled assessment before it, and your accreditation body sets the milestones in between. Plan backwards from that. The transition checklist bundle in the description is built precisely for this move. The documentation kit is already written to the 2026 edition, so you are updating rather than drafting. There are checklists for implementation, internal audit, and the accreditation audit itself, and the training course covers the whole standard. Tell me in the comments what date your accreditation body has given you, because those dates differ, and it would be useful for everyone watching to compare. Subscribe for the rest of the series.